We need to understand climate change more deeply. We have information, we know that things are changing, that the glaciers are retreating, that the sea levels are rising, the ambient temperature of our planet is rising. But we still do not have granular information of how these changes are happening.
Hi Manish, nice to have you on board.
Hi
To
Sachin,
begin
how are
with,
you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? How is Delhi?
Good, good. Everything is good here.
Except you're not able to get out.
Yes.
So please tell us a bit about yourself and your gig at Himalayan Institute of Alternative Learning.
Yeah. So I'm a MBA. I am a professional manager, business manager. I have been working in various fields for the last 8 years. I started my career as a supply chain professional. Worked in Dulux Paints for 4 years. Thereafter, I shifted to the hospitality business. I moved to Goa Vivo, and I was heading their domestic hotels business from a revenue perspective. And after that, 2 years ago, I wanted to do something for the community. I wanted to work closely in the Indian Himalayas, and therefore I moved to Ladakh. I joined this institute called Himalayan Institute of Alternatives Ladakh, which is started by Mr. Sonam Wangchuk, who is also famous for running his school, SecMol, for the last 25 years. Uh, so I joined Hayal, and in Hayal, I was working on a variety of different projects. The core idea of Hayal is that we want to set up a research institute and an institute which brings about practical solutions for people living in the Himalayas in terms of climate change, in terms of rural migration, in terms of economic hardships, and how we can create a better life, a more sustainable life for the residents of the Himalayas.
So how do you
Uh,
think technology, including IoT, is playing a pivotal role in fighting climate change? Yeah.
I think to understand the role of technology, to understand how technology can help, we need to understand climate change more deeply. We have information, we know that things are changing, that the glaciers are retreating, that the sea levels are rising, the ambient temperature of our planet is rising. But we still do not have granular information of how these changes are happening. And I think for any solution to be created, we need to know the problem in more depth. That is the first place where internet can help, where data can help. Okay. We need to know much more deeply of what is changing, and that is where IoT devices, IoT solutions can help us track the data better. Okay. I'll just take an example. We know that the glaciers are receding, but if we have sensors that we can put on a glacier, which can tell us how they are retreating, what is the rate with which they are retreating, what is the flow rate of the water moving out of a glacier, what is the snowfall rate, which tells us how much snowfall is getting accumulated on a glacier. It is these details that will help us create solutions to mitigate the retreat of glaciers. And they will help us if the eventuality is that the glaciers are going to go away. They will give us a line of sight of how much time do we have, how much time do we have to create alternate source of water if the glaciers are going to go in the next 10 years or in the next 15 years. So it is very important to understand the problem, and that is where the IoT devices, the IoT technology can help us.
So for us to be able to sort of monitor these glaciers in real time and see as to how fast are they depleting, we need to have some sort of a connectivity in order to send these data points to the internet for us to be to sort of analyze it and make sense out of it. Most of these glaciers that you're talking about are generally in very remote areas. So how do you think we can tackle this with technology?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it is a problem of availability of technology, then it's a problem of connectivity. Okay, and these are two things which have to be solved simultaneously. Okay, So first, yes, we need weather stations which can transmit information real time about what is happening on the glaciers, how is the weather conditions, how are the patterns changing. And then we need connectivity so that that information which is being recorded real time can be transmitted to the weather stations or to places where people can work on the data and try to find out what are the solutions. So we need both of things. We need real-time sensors, and then we need the correct connectivity solutions which can help us. And that is where I think technologies like PodNet and other things can come in use.
So that was really well articulated, Manish. My next question is, what kind of tech measures did you guys take when you were at Hayal to propagate sustainable future of Ladakh?
Basically, Hayal builds on the 25 years of experience in sustainable technologies on which SecMol has been working. SecMol is the alternate school which is run by Mr. Sonam Wangchuk in Ladakh uh, and is well known across the world for its innovative education techniques. So I'll talk about a few of the things that we are doing in Hayal. So the first thing is passive solar heating. So using natural materials and using only the energy of the sun, we are creating accommodation units and classrooms in Hayal University, which will stay at plus 20 degrees throughout the year. So even in the harsh winters of the cold desert of Ladakh, when temperature plunges to as low as minus 25 or minus 30 degrees Celsius, we can conduct our classrooms, we can give a very comfortable standard of living to our teachers and to our students in Ladakh so that their education is not hampered. Now, all of this is being done by using locally available materials and by using passive solar heating technique, which has been experimented with across the world, and trying to give it a local Ladakhi angle, trying to make sure that it is suitable for Ladakh. Yes. So that is one technique that we are using. Now within that, while we are experimenting with different kind of materials to create our passive solar houses, it is very important to understand which of these materials work well and which materials do not work well. So for that, all these houses that we are making are equipped with temperature sensors and humidity sensors, data from which is analyzed and recorded throughout the winter so that we understand and we know that which building material is more efficient. And we are basically able to do an
Like a
analysis
test.
between the cost and the impact. Okay, so material one will have a certain cost and it will lead to this temperature, whereas material two can be more expensive, but it gives much more warmth. So you have to finally come to a middle ground. So
Okay.
this is the first thing that we are working in the accommodation space. Thereafter, the solution or the product called Ice Tupa has been propagated in Ladakh, which basically works directly to cater to the problem of water in that cold desert. So what we do is that we try to store the winter water, which normally goes waste because it is not being used in agriculture and household. That is being stored in the shape of ice stupas in Ladakh above the villages. And when spring comes and when the temperatures start rising, that water starts melting and it gives very precious resource for agriculture in the spring season when it is needed most, and when the natural springs are still frozen and they are not giving the water. So within that also we use flow meters, we use very small internet devices, IoT devices, basically which can tell us whether our technique of creating these ice stupas are efficient or not. Basically, it's a very simple science game. Ice stupa is created using gravity only, but it is using these small tech devices that we can improve the process and we can make the whole process much more efficient so that we can store more water, which is then available in the spring for the villagers. Uh, Thereafter, we are working a lot on agriculture, on forestation, trying to green up vast patches of desert land in Ladakh, in our university in Hayal also. So for that also, while we have not started doing it, we are planning to use moisture meters. We are planning to use radiation meters to see which plants survive in how much moisture, in what kind of radiation, so that we can create the most optimum atmosphere for each plant to grow in a healthy manner. So these are some of the things that we are working on, and Hayal in its soul is a research institute. So we will keep like going forward. I'm sure Hayal will keep working on a lot of other solutions where we will use IoT uh, to create solutions.
So, Manish, I wanted to know if that like passive solar heating concept has been applied anywhere else, or were you guys the first people to adopt it right now?
Passive solar heating as a concept has existed for a long time. In fact, if you go back, most of our ancestors used to build houses keeping these concepts in mind. That's why our houses, our ancestral houses used to be warm in the winters and they used to be cool in the summers. Okay, that's basically the same technique that we're trying to use. What we're trying to do is we're trying to adapt the technique to suit the environment of Ladakh. And I think it is very important that we have solutions which are locally adaptable and globally one size fit all solutions do not work. And they are the core issue of why climate is in such a mess because we have adopted one size fits all solution for everything in our lives. So yes, they have been used earlier, but we are trying to adopt them for Ladakh. I'll give you a very simple example that we are working on a project for the Indian Army where we are trying to create housing using passive solar heating technique for our soldiers who are working on the forward posts. So let's take the example of Siachen Glacier. So Siachen Glacier, the temperature plunges as low as minus 60, minus 70 degrees Celsius. And it's a very, very difficult environment to stay in and to work in. So, and what's happening right now is that the Indian Army is using oil to provide heating solutions for its soldiers. Now, oil has multiple issues. The first issue is logistics. It's a nightmare to get so much oil to be transported to those heights of 21,000 feet, 20,000 feet. The second is the economic burden. It costs a lot of money to burn so much oil. And the third issue is the environmental issue. When you're burning so much oil on the glaciers, the soot, the smoke from that burning oil goes and settles on the glaciers and makes it dark. Now, class 6 science tells us that a darker object absorbs more heat. So you have the glaciers which are melting faster because they have this layer of soot on the top. So global warming is a global issue, yes, but these small local things which happen, which also leads to melting of glaciers, retreat of glaciers, and overall issues in life for people living in the Himalayas. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to create housing for the soldiers, which uses passive solar heating techniques, so that it gives them a comfortable place to stay in. It reduces the use of oil, and we are trying to do it in such a way that it uses the concept of a Lego house. So a house which you can put together very quickly in 7 days, and then you can remove it and dismantle it and take it somewhere else and put it up again because the glacier is always moving, so you cannot have permanent houses. So this is something that we are trying to solve.
Got it. So, just out of curiosity, wanted to know as to who goes around and does do you guys have volunteers who build these houses, or do you guys have people that you've hired to build these houses? How does it go about? How do you guys go about
So
it?
the first thing is that all these solutions are being created within the university structure. So we have our own internal teams of architects and engineers and civil engineers, structural engineers, who are creating these solutions. It is after the solutions are created, then we are very happy to give these solutions outside to people to implement it themselves. Like for the army, we can give the solution to military engineering services, and they can then create these houses for the soldiers. Because what we are capable of, what or what we want to do is that we want to keep working on creating different solutions. Some of them we will create into separate business units, okay, which will be kept outside of the university structure, and then they will run as basically profit-making centers, and people can run them themselves. Whereas
Got it.
our university focuses on the academic bit.
Got it. My next question is, what are some of the basic measures that almost all companies can take to sort of promote sustainable development and reduce carbon footprint at the company level, at the organization's level?
Yes. So this is something we have been thinking about a lot, and we have been talking about it. And so I'll give you a small thing. In December this year, last year, 2019, we have launched a movement which is called I Live Simply. You can find it out on ilivesimply.org.
Yes,
What we
sir.
do in that is that we encourage individuals to take pledges to make changes in their lifestyle, which can help them reduce their carbon footprint on Earth. And we measure those changes in terms of dollar value. So what happens is if you're driving a car for 50 kilometers every week, and then you take a pledge that now I'll drive it for 20 kilometers every week. So if you reduce 30 kilometers a week, over 52 weeks, you have reduced around 1500, 1600 kilometers. Now, every kilometer of car driven has a carbon footprint. So for that 1500 kilometers, your carbon footprint is taken, average carbon footprint is taken. We convert it into how much CO2 would be emitted if you drive those extra 1500 kilometers. Okay, then that leads us to carbon credits, and then we give it a dollar value. So what happens is when you change your lifestyle, you contribute towards Earth, towards the environment, towards the nature in terms of this much dollars, X amount of dollars. The
Got it.
reason we have kept it in dollars is because, fortunately or unfortunately, it is the value of money, it is the language of money that everyone understands today. So this is what we are trying to do at an individual level. For organizations, for companies, there are a lot of things that you can do. First, let's start with manufacturing units. Okay, so what you can do is you can simply go back to your manufacturing processes. You can do a value stream mapping of each step that you are following in your manufacturing processes. You can see how much value is it adding to your final product and how much CO2 emission is it leading to. And then you can do a cost benefit analysis. You can see which other things you can let go of. Can you change your raw materials? Can you change your suppliers? Can you start procuring your raw materials from closer to your factory so that the transportation is reduced? Can you change your fuel sources? Can you move to solar? Can you reduce your dependence of fossil? This is how a manufacturing unit can work on it. Similarly, for corporate houses, for people working in IT sector or in MNCs, I'll take a very simple, small example. Most of the companies, and I'm sure you would have seen, you would have gone and worked there. Most of the companies, the AC temperatures are maintained at 18 to 19 degrees. Now, that's a very uncomfortable temperature for human beings. So what you will see is that a lot of people, even in peak summers, will be wearing jackets or will be carrying a stole over them because they're feeling cold. But still, no one is making sure that you can just increase the temperature. Now, if you change the temperature from 18 degrees to 23 or 24 degrees, which is scientifically said to be a comfortable temperature for human beings, you are saving so much in fuel cost because you're using your air conditioner so much lesser. It's a very simple thing. It's something you can do by just moving a knob, but people don't do it. Everyone still maintains the temperature in offices at 18 degrees. Okay, you have people drink a lot of coffee in corporate houses, right? And they drink those in those small plastic cups. You can simply change to ceramic mugs, and people can just drink coffee and wash it up. So it is small things. It is always about small things. Every individual, every organization, they need to look at the small things. What can I change today? What can I change today? And for most of these changes, trust me, it will not be a painful exercise. It will not lead to any reduction in your quality of life. In fact, If you understand what you're doing, if you understand the impact of what you're doing, you'll feel happy about it.
That's correct. That is correct. I think that not only applies to organizations. I think you and me and everyone else and all of our
Yes.
friends can sort of take it up and with the intention that they want to contribute to save the planet. And I'm sure that they will feel bad, like they'll feel much I about it. I
Yes.
was seeing a video of Sonam Wangchuk wherein he was talking about a very nice tradition of Ladakh, and he was showing how Ladakhis keep their cups in their jackets,
Yes.
and they travel with their cups throughout the city, and whenever they have to have chai or pani or whatever, they just use that cup and then they keep it back and they wash it and they reuse it. And
Yes.
in the same video he was saying that this is one tradition that the world can take from Ladakh. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
similarly we can look for similar traditions even within the country and throughout the world that are extremely sustainable, that used to be practiced by people in the past, but are very nice for our nature and earth.
Absolutely. If you see, I think Ladakh as a society uh, has sustained through a lot of these practices that they used to do earlier, and they're still doing. Uh, and we can actually go back, look at what all of our ancestors were doing, and we don't need to go long way back. We can just go back one generation or two generations back, see what our families, what our grandparents were doing. They were living a much more sustainable life. Their carbon footprints were much lower. Okay, we can just go back, learn from them what they used to do, make those small changes in our house in terms of how you, well, a very simple thing. So all your kitchen waste, if you can start composting that, that's basically black gold, that's brown gold. Okay, you can use that as manure anywhere in your gardens. We don't need to depend on fertilizers, on urea, and all of this can be very easily used. So, like this, there are so many things that we can learn from our grandparents. We just need to sit with them and see how they used to live. It is just in the last 2 to 3 or 4 decades that we have gotten into the spiral of consumerism where every day new and new things are coming, and every day whatever is coming is not enough for us. And we are constantly running towards more and more and more. It's not making us happy. For sure, it's not making us happy. It's making us more delusional towards what the reality of life is. But we need to come back. We need to come back to the ground. And I'm sure, I hope that while this pandemic is creating a lot of hardship for humans, it will give us a chance to step back and think about our lives and create meaningful changes in our lives and hopefully lead towards a greener future.